room Egwene had been given on the same gallery with Nynaeve and Elaine was little different from Nynaeve's. Her bed was a trifle wider, her table a little smaller. Her bit of rug had flowers instead of scrolls. That was all. Half of the novices' quarters it seemed like a room in a palace, but when the three of them gathered there late that night, Egwene wished she were back on the novice galleries, with no ring on her finger, no bands on her breast. The others looked as nervous as she felt. They had worked in the kitchens for 2 more meals, and in between tried to puzzle out the meaning of what they had found in the storeroom. Was it a trap, or an attempt to divert the search? Did the Amulet know of the things? And if she did, why had she not mentioned them? Talking provided no answers, and the Amulet never appeared so they could ask her. Varen had come into the kitchens after the midday meal, blinking as if she were not sure why she was coming. When she saw Egwene and the other two on their knees among the cauldrons and kettles, she looked surprised for a moment, then walked over and asked, loud enough for anyone to hear, "Have you found anything?" Elaine, with her head and shoulders inside a huge soup kettle, banged her head on the rim, backing out. Her blue eyes seemed to take up her entire face. "Nothing but grease and sweat, Aes Sedai," Nynaeve said. The tug she gave her braid left a smear of greasy silk suds on her dark hair, and she winced. Varen nodded as if that were the answer she had been seeking. "Well, keep looking." She peered around the kitchen again, frowning as though puzzled to find herself there. Alana came to the kitchens after midday too, collecting a bowl of big green gooseberries and a pitcher of wine, and Elida, then Shiriam, appeared after supper, and Anaya too. Alana had asked Egwene if she wanted to know more of the Green Aja, inquired when they were going to get on with their studies. Just because the accepted chose their own lessons and pace did not mean they were not supposed to do any at all. The first few weeks would be bad, of course, but they had to choose, or the choosing would be done for them. Elida merely stood for a time, stern-faced and staring at them, hands on her hips, and Shiriam did the same in almost the identical ways. Anaya stood the same way, but her look was more concerned, until she saw them glancing at her. Then her face became a match for Elida's and Shiriam's before her. None of those visits meant anything that Egwene could see. The mistress of novices certainly had reason to check on them, as well as on the novices working in the kitchens, and Elida had reason to keep an eye on the daughter heir of Anwar. Egwene tried not to think of the Aes Sedai's interest in Rand. As for Alana, she was not the only Aes Sedai who came for a tray to take back to her rooms, rather than eat with the others. Half the sisters in the tower were too busy for meals, too busy to take the time
One
to summon
second.
servant
I'll
to fetch
be
a
right
tray.
back.
And Anaya could well be concerned for Retriever, not that she would do anything to ease a punishment set by the Amaryllis herself. That could have been Anaya's reason for coming. It could have been. Hanging her dress in the wardrobe, Egwene told herself once again that even Darren's slit could have been perfectly ordinary. The brown sister is often absent-minded. It was a slip. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she pulled up her shift and began rolling down her stockings. She was almost beginning to dislike white as much as she did gray. Nynaeve stood in front of the fireplace with Egwene's pouch in one hand, tugging her robe. Elaine sat by the table making nervous conversation. "Green Alta," the golden-haired woman said, for what Egwene thought must be the 20th time since midday. "I might choose Green Alta myself, Egwene. Then I can have 3 or 4 warriors, perhaps marry one of them. Who better for Prince Consort of Andor than a warder? Unless it is not." She trailed off, blushing. Egwene felt a pang of jealousy she thought she had put down long ago, and sympathy mixed with it. Right. How can I be jealous when I cannot look at the lot without shivering and feeling as if I am melting, both at the same time? Rand was mine, but no more. I wish I could give him to you, Elaine, but he is not for either of us now. It may be all well and good for the daughter heir to marry a commoner, as long as he's an outdoor man, but not to marry the dragon within. She let the stockings fall on the floor, telling herself there were more important things to worry about tonight than uniforms. I'm ready, Naive. Naive handed her the pouch and a long, thin strip of leather. Perhaps it will work for more than one at once. I could go with you, perhaps. Emptying the stone ring onto the palm, Egwene threaded the leather strip through it, then tied it on. The stripes and flecks of blue and brown and red seemed more vivid against the white of her shirt. And leave Elaine to watch over the both of us alone, when the Black Ajah may know us? I can do it, Elaine said stoutly. Or let me go with you, and Nynaeve can keep guard. She is the strongest of us when she's angry, and if there is need for a guard, you can be sure she will. Egwene shook her head. What if it won't work for two? What if two of us try makes it not work at all? We would not even know till we woke up, and then we've wasted the night. We cannot waste even one without catching. We're too far behind them already. They were valid reasons, and she believed them, but there was another, closer to her heart. Besides, I'll feel better knowing both of you are watching over me in case. She did not want to say it. In case someone came while she was asleep. The Grey Man, the Black Ajah, any one of the things that had turned the White Tower from a place of safety to a dark woods full of pits and snares. Something coming in while she lay there helpless. Their faces showed they understood. As she stretched herself out on the bed and hugged the feather pillow behind her head, Elaine moved the chairs, one to either side of her bed. Nynaeve snuffed the candles one by one. Then, in the dark, sat on the chairs, Elaine together. Egwene closed her eyes and tried to think sleepy thoughts. She was too conscious of the thin line between her breasts. Far more conscious than of any soreness remaining from her visit to Shiriam's study. The ring seemed to weigh as much as a brick now, and thoughts of home and quiet pools of water all slid apart with remembrance of the Tellerranian, the unseen world, a world of dreams, waiting just the other side of sleep. Nynaeve began to hum softly. Egwene recognized a nameless, wordless tune her mother used to hum to her when she was little. When she was lying in bed in her own room with a fluffy pillow, warm blankets, and the mingled smells of rose oil and baking from her mother, and, are you all right, Karen? Who was she? Sleep came. She stood among rolling hills, quilted with wildflowers and dotted with small thickets of leafy trees in the hollows and on the crests. Butterflies floated above the blossoms, wings flashing yellow and blue and green, and two larks sang to each other nearby. Just enough fluffy white clouds drifted in a soft blue sky, and the breeze held that delicate balance between cool and warm that came only a few special days in spring. It was a day too perfect to be anything but a dream. She looked at her dress and laughed delightedly. Exactly her favorite shade of sky blue silk, slashed with white in the skirt, that changed to green as she frowned momentarily, sewn with rows of tiny pearls down the sleeves and across the bosom. She stuck out a foot just to peep at the toe of the velvet slipper. The only jarring note was the twisted ring of multicolored stone hanging around her neck on a leather cord. She took the ring in her hand and gasped. It felt as light as a feather. If she tossed it up, she was sure it would drift away like thistledown. Somehow she could not feel afraid of it any longer. She tucked it inside the neck of her dress to get it out of the way. So this is Varen's Tellerranian, she said. Coriana Nadil's world of dreams. It does not look dangerous to me. But Varen had said it was. Like Aja or not, Egwene did not see how any eyes Sedai could tell a lie right out. She could be mistaken, but she did not believe Varen was. Just to see if she could, she opened herself to the one power. Saidar filled her. Even here it was present. She channeled the flow lightly, delicately, directed it into the breeze, swirling butterflies into fluttering spirals of color, into circles linked with circles. Abruptly she let go. The butterflies settled back, unconcerned by their brief adventure. Myrdral and some other shadow spawn could sense someone channeling. Looking around, she could not imagine such things in that place, but just because she could not imagine them did not mean they were not there. And the Black Aja had all those Terranguials studied by Corian and Medea. It was a sickening reminder of why she was there. At least I know I can channel, she muttered. I'm not learning anything standing here. Perhaps if I look around. She took a step, and was standing in the dank, dark hallway of an inn. She was an innkeeper's daughter. She was sure it was an inn. There was not a sound, and all the doors along the hall were shut tight. Just as she wondered who was behind the plain wooden door in front of her, it swung silently open. The room within was bare, and cold wind moaned through open windows, stirring old ash on the hearth. A big dog lay curled up on the floor, shaggy tail across its nose, between the door and a thick pillar of rough-cut black stone that stood in the middle of the floor. A large, shaggy-haired young man sat leaning back against the pillar in only his small clothes, head lolling as if asleep. A massive black chain ran around the pillar and across his chest, the ends gripped in his clenched hands. Asleep or not, his heavy muscles strained to hold that chain tight, to prison himself against the pillar. Perrin, she said wonderingly. She stepped into the room. Perrin, what's the matter with you? Perrin! The dog uncurled itself and stood. It was not a dog, but a wolf, all black and gray, lips curling back from glistening white teeth, yellow eyes regarding her as they might have a mouse it meant to eat. Egwene stepped back hastily into the hall in spite of herself. Perrin, wake up, there's a wolf! Perrin had said what happened here was real and showed the scar to prove it. The wolf's teeth looked as big as knives. Perrin, wake up! Tell it I'm a friend! She embraced Saidar. The wolf stalked nearer. Perrin's head came up, his eyes opened drowsily. Two sets of yellow eyes regarded her. The wolf gathered himself. Hopper! Perrin shouted. No! Egwene! The door swung shut before her face, and total darkness enveloped her. She could not see, but she felt sweat beading on her forehead. Not from Light, where am I? I don't like this place. I want to wake up. A whirring sound, and she jumped before she recognized a cricket. A frog gave a bass croak in the darkness, and the chorus answered it. As her eyes adapted, she dimly made out trees all around her. Clouds blanketed the stars, and the moon was a thin sliver. Off to her right through the woods was another glow, flickering, a campfire. She considered a moment before moving. Wanting to wake up had not been enough to take her away from Tellerang, and she still had not found out anything useful. And she had not been hurt in any way. So far, she thought, shivering. But she had no idea who or what was at that campfire. It could be Murderog. Besides, I'm not dressed for running around in the forest. It was the last thought that decided her. She prided herself on knowing when she was being foolish. Taking a deep breath, she gathered up her silken skirts and crept closer. She might not have Nynaeve's skill at woodcraft, but she knew enough to avoid stepping on dead twigs. At last, she peered carefully around the trunk of an old oak at the campfire. The only one there was a tall young man, sitting and staring into the flames. Ran. Those flames did not burn wood. They did not burn anything that she could see. The fire danced above a bare patch of ground. She did not think they even scorched the soil. Before she could move, Rand raised his head. She was surprised to see he was smoking a pipe, a thin ribbon of tabac smoke lifting from the bowl. He looked tired, so very tired. Who's out there? He demanded loudly. You've rustled enough leaves to wake the dead, so you might as well show yourself. Egwene's lips compressed, but she stepped out. It's me, Rand. Do not be afraid. It is a dream. I must be in your dreams. He was on his feet so suddenly that she stopped dead. He seemed in some way larger than she remembered, and a touch dangerous. Perhaps more than a touch. His blue-gray eyes seemed to burn like frozen fire. Do you think I don't know it is a dream? He sneered. I know that makes it no less real. He stared angrily out into the darkness as if looking for someone. How long will you try? He shouted at the night. How many faces will you send? My mother, my father, now her. Pretty girls won't tempt me with a kiss, not even one I know. I deny you, father of lies. I deny you. And, she said uncertainly, it's Egwene. I am Egwene. There was a sword in his hands, suddenly, out of nowhere. Its blade was worked out of a single flame, slightly curved and graven with a heron. My mother gave me honey cake, he said in a tight voice, with the smell of poison rank on it. My father had a knife for my ribs. She she offered kisses and more. Sweat slicked his face. His stare seemed enough to set her afire. What do you bring? You are going to listen to me, Randall Thor. If I have to sit on you. She gathered Saidar, channeled the flows to make the air hold him in a net. The sword spun in his hands, roaring like an open furnace. She grunted and staggered. It felt as if a rope stretched too tight had broken and snapped back into her. Rand laughed. I learned, you see. When it works, he grimaced and started toward her. I could stand any face but that. Not her face, burn you! The sword flashed out. Egwene fled. She was not sure what it was she did or how, but she found herself back among the rolling hills under a sunny sky, with larks singing and butterflies playing. She drew a deep, shuddering breath. I've learned what? That the Dark One is still after Rand? I knew that already. That maybe the Dark One wants to kill him? That's different. Unless maybe he's gone mad already and does not know what he's saying. Light, why couldn't I help him? Oh, Light, Rand. She took another long breath to calm herself. The only way to help him is to gentle him, she muttered. As well go ahead and kill him. Her stomach twisted and lumbered. I'll never do that. Never. A red bird had perched on a cloudberry bush nearby, crest lifting as it tilted its head to watch her cautiously. She addressed the bird. Well, I'm not helping anything standing here talking to myself, am I? Or talking to you either. The red bird took wing as she stepped toward the bush. It was still a flash of crimson as she took the next step, vanished into a thicket as she took a third. She stopped and fished the stone ring on its cord out of the front of her dress. Why was it not changing? Everything had changed so fast up till now that she could hardly catch her breath. Why not now? Unless there was some answer right here. She looked around uncertainly. The wildflowers taunted her, and the lark song mocked her. This place seems too much of her own making. Determined, she tightened her hand around the Turanial. Take me where I need to be. She shut her eyes and concentrated on the ring. It was stone, after all. Earth should give her some feeling for it. Do it. Take me where I need to be. Once again, she embraced Saidar, fed a trickle of the one power into the ring. She knew it did not need any flow of power directed at it to work, and she did not try to do anything to it, only to give it more of the power to use. Take me to where I can find an answer. I need to know what the Black Aja wants. Take me to the answer. Well, you found your way at last, child. All sorts of answers here. Egwene's eyes snapped open. She stood in a great hall, its vast domed ceiling supported by a forest of massive red stone columns, and hanging in midair was a sword of crystal, gleaming and sparkling as it slowly revolved. She was not certain, but she thought it might be the sword Rand had been reaching for in that dream. That other dream. This all felt so real, she had to keep reminding herself it was a dream, too. An old woman stepped out of the shadows of the column, bent and hobbling with a stick. Ugly did not begin to describe her. She had a bony, pointed chin, an even bonier, sharper nose, and it seemed there were more warts growing hairs on her face than there was face. Who are you? Egwene said. The only people she had seen so far in Tellerong were those she already knew, and she did not think she could have forgotten this poor old woman. Just poor old Sylvie, my lady, the old woman cackled. At the same time, she managed a stoop that might have been meant for a curtsy, or possibly a cringe. You know poor old Sylvie, my lady. Served your family faithfully all these years. Does this old face still frighten you? Don't let it, my lady. It serves me when I need it as good as a prettier. Of course it does, Pigwam said. It's a strong face, a good face. She hoped the woman believed it. Whoever this Sylvie was, she seemed to think she knew Egwene. Perhaps she knew answers, too. Sylvie, you said something about finding answers here. Oh, you've come to the right place for answers, my lady. The heart of the stone is full of answers and secrets. The High Lords would not be pleased to see us here. Oh, no. None but the High Lords enter here, and the servants, of course. She gave a sly, screeching laugh. The High Lords don't sweep and mop, but who sees a servant? What kind of secrets? But Sylvie was hobbling toward the crystal sword. Lots, she said, as if to herself. All of them pretending to serve the great lord, and all the while plotting and planning to regain what they lost. Each one thinking he or she is the only one plotting. Ishamael is a fool, Egwene said sharply. What did you say about Ishamael? The old woman turned to present a crooked, ingratiating smile. It's the thing poor folks say, my lady. It turns the Forsaken's power, calling them fools. Makes you feel good and safe. Even the shadow can't take being called a fool. Try it, my lady. Say, Balsamon is a fool. Egwene's lips twitched on the edge of a smile. Balsamon is a fool. You are right, Sylvie. It actually did feel good, laughing at the dark one. The old woman chuckled. The sword revolved just beyond her shoulder. Sylvie, what is that? Callandor, my lady. You know that, don't you? The sword that cannot be touched. Abruptly, she swung her stick behind her. A foot from the sword, the stick stopped with a dull thwack and bounded back. Sylvie grinned wider. The sword that is not a sword, though there's precious few knows what it is, but none can touch it save one. They saw to that who put it here. The dragon Reborn will hold Callandor one day and prove to the world he's the dragon by doing it. The first proof, anyway. Lose Theron come back for all the world to see and grovel before. Ah, the High Lords don't like having it here. They like nothing to do with the power. They'd rid themselves of it if they could. If they could. I suppose there's others would take it if they could. What wouldn't one of the Forsaken give to hold Callandor? Egwene stared at the sparkling sword. If the prophecies of the dragon were true, if Rand was the dragon as Moiraine had claimed, he would wield it one day, though from the rest of what she knew of the prophecies concerning Callandor, she could not see how it could ever come to be. But if there's a way to take it, maybe the Black Archer knows how. If they know it, I can figure it out. Cautiously, she reached out with the power, probing at whatever held and shielded the sword. Her probe touched something and stopped. She could sense which of the five powers had been used here: air and fire and spirit. She could trace the intricate weave made by Saidar, set with a strength that amazed her. There were gaps in that weave, spaces where her probe should slide through. When she tried, it was like fighting the strongest part of the weave head on. It hit her then, what she was trying to force a way through, and she let her probe vanish. Half that wall had been woven using Saidar. The other half, the part she could not sense or touch, had been made with Saidin. That was not it exactly. The wall was all of one piece, but it was close enough. A stone wall stops a blind woman as surely as one who can see. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Boots. Egwene could not tell how many there were or from which direction they were coming, but Sylvie gave a start and immediately stared off among the columns. eyes. Just stare at it again, she murmured. Awake or asleep. He wants... She seemed to remember Egwene and put on a worried smile. You must leave now, my lady. He mustn't find you here, or even know you've been. Egwene was already backing in among the columns, and Sylvie followed, flapping her hands and waving her stick. I am going, Sylvie. I just have to remember the way. She fingered the stone ring. Take me back to the hills. Nothing happened. She channeled the hair-like flow to the ring. Take me back to the hills. The red stone columns still surrounded her. The boots were closer, close enough not to be swallowed in their own echoes anymore. You don't know the way out, Sylvie said flatly, then went on in a near whisper, ingratiating and mocking at once, an old retainer who felt she could take liberties. Oh, my lady, this is a dangerous place to come into if you don't know the way out. Come, let poor old Sylvie take you out. Poor old Sylvie will find you safe in your bed. She wrapped both arms around Egwene, urging her further from the sword. Not that Egwene needed much urging. The boots had stopped. He, whoever he was probably gazing at Palandor. Just show me the way, Egwene whispered back. Or tell me. There's no need to push. The old woman's fingers had somehow gotten tangled around the stone ring. Don't touch that, Sylvie. Safe in your bed. Pain annihilated the world. With a throat-wrenching shriek, Egwene sat up in the dark, sweat rolling down her face. For a moment she had no idea where she was and did not care. Oh, light, she moaned. That hurt. Oh, light, that hurt. She ran her hands over herself, sure her skin must be scored or healed to make such a burning, but she could not find it. We are here, Nynaeve's voice said from the darkness. We're here, Egwene. Egwene threw herself toward the voice and wrapped her arms around Nynaeve's neck in sheer relief. Oh, Light, I'm back! Light, I'm back! Elaine, Nynaeve said. In a moment, one of the candles was giving a small light. Elaine paused with the candle in hand and the spill she had lit with flint and steel in the other. Then she smiled, and every candle in the room burst into flame. She stopped the washstand and came back to the bed with a cool, damp cloth to wash Egwene's face. Was it bad? She asked worriedly. You never stirred. You never mumbled. We did not know whether to wait for you. Hurriedly, Egwene fumbled the leather cord from around her neck and hurled it and the stone ring across the room. Next time, she panted. We decide on a time and you wake me after. Wake me if you have to stick my head in a basin of water. She had not realized that she had decided there would be a next time. Would you put your head in the bear's mouth just to show you weren't afraid? Would you do it twice just because you'd done it once and didn't die? Yet it was more than a matter of proving to herself that she was not afraid. She was afraid and knew it. But so long as the Black Aja had those ter'angreal Corianin had studied, she would have to keep going back. She was sure the answer to why they wanted them lay in Tel'aran'rhiod. If she could find answers about the Black Aja there, perhaps other answers too, if half what she had been told about dreaming were true, she had to go back. But not tonight, she said softly. Not yet. What happened? Nynaeve asked. What did you dream? Egwene lay back on the bed and thought. Of it all, the only thing she left out was about Perrin talking to the wolf. She left the wolf out altogether. She felt a little guilty about keeping secrets from Elaine and Nynaeve, but it was Perrin's secret to tell, when and if he chose, not hers. The rest she gave them word for word, describing everything. When she was done, she felt empty. Aside from being tired, Elaine said, did he look hurt? Egwene, I cannot believe he would ever hurt you. I cannot believe he would. Ran, Nynaeve said dryly. Will have to look after himself a while longer. Elaine blushed. She looked pretty doing it. Egwene realized that Elaine looked pretty doing anything, even crying or scrubbing paws. Palandor, Nynaeve continued. The heart of the stone. That was marked on the plan. I think we know where the Black Aja is. Elaine had regained her poise. eyes. It does not change the trap, she said. If it is not a diversion, it is a trap. Nynaeve smiled grimly. The best way to catch whoever set a trap is to spring it and wait for him to come. Or her, in this instance. You mean go to Tyr? Egwene said, and Nynaeve nodded. The Ammerman has cut us loose, it seems. We make our own decisions, remember? At least we know the Black Aja is in Tyr, and we know who to look for there. Here, all we can do is sit and stew in our own suspicions of everybody, wonder if there is another gray man out there. I would rather be the hound than the rabbit. I have to write to my mother, Elaine said. When she saw the looks they gave her, her voice became defensive. I have already vanished once without her knowing where I was. If I do it again, you do not know Mother's temper. She could send Gareth Bryn and the whole army against Tar Valon, or hunting after us. You could stay here, Egwene said. No, I will not let you two go alone, and I won't stay here wondering if the sister teaching me is a dark friend, or if the next gray man will come after me. She gave a small laugh. I will not work in kitchens while you two are off adventuring either. I just have to tell my mother that I'm out of the tower on the Almanan's orders, so she won't become furious if she hears rumors. I do not have to tell her where we are going or why. You surely had better not, Nynaeve said. She very likely would come after you if she knew about the Black Aja. For that matter, you can't know how many hands your letter will pass through before it reaches her, or what eyes might read it. Best not to say anything you don't mind anyone knowing. That's another thing, Elaine sighed. The Amelin does not know I am one of you. I have to find some way to send it, with no chance of her seeing it. I'll have to think on that. Nynaeve's brows furrowed. Perhaps once we're on our way. You could leave it at Arengil on the way downriver if we have time to find someone there going to Camelin. A sight of one of those papers the Amelin gave us might convince someone. We will have to hope they work on ship captains, too, unless one of you has more coin than I have. Elaine shook her head dolefully. Egwene did not even bother. What money they had possessed had all gone on the journey from Tomon Head, except for a few coppers each. When? She had to stop and clear her throat. When do we leave? Tonight? Nynaeve looked as if she were considering it for a moment, then she shook her head. You need sleep after. Her gesture took in the stone ring lying where it had bounced off the wall. We will give the Allen one more chance to seek us out. When we finish with breakfast, you both pack what you want to take, but keep it light. We have to leave the tower without anyone noticing, remember? If the Amelin doesn't reach us by midday, I mean to be on a trading ship, shoving that paper down the captain's throat if need be before prime sounds. How does that sound to you? It sounds excellent, Elaine said firmly. And Egwene said, tonight or tomorrow, the sooner the better, as far as I can see. She wished she sounded as confident as Elaine. Then we'd best get some sleep. Nynaeve, Egwene said in a small voice. I don't want to be alone tonight. It pained her to make that admission. I don't either, Elaine said. I keep thinking about the souls. I do not know why, but they frighten me even more than the Black Aja. I suppose, Nynaeve said slowly, I don't really want to be alone myself. She eyed the bed where Egwene lay. That looks big enough for three if everybody keeps her elbows to herself. Later, when they were shifting about, trying to find a way to lie that did not feel so crowded, Nynaeve suddenly laughed. What is it? Egwene asked. You are not that ticklish. I just thought of someone who'd be happy to carry Elaine's letter for her. Happy to leave Tar Valon, too. In fact, I'd bet on it.
Chapter 28. Way out. Clad only in his breeches, Matt was just finishing a snack after breakfast. Some ham, 3 apples, bread, and butter. When the door of his room opened, and Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine filed in, all smiling at him brightly. He got up for his shirt, then stubbornly sat down again. They could at least have knocked. In any case, it was good to see their faces. At first, it was. Well, you do look better, Egwene said. As if you have had a month of good food and rest, Elaine said. Nynaeve pressed a hand to his forehead. He flinched before he recalled that she had done much the same for at least 5 years back home. She was just the wisdom, he thought. She wasn't wearing that ring. She had noticed his flinch. She gave him a tight smile. You look ready to be up and about to me. Are you tired of being cooped up yet? You never could stand 2 days in a row indoors. He eyed the last apple core reluctantly and dropped it back on the plate. Almost. He started to lick the juice off his fingers, but they were all three looking at him. And still smiling. He realized he was trying to decide which of them was prettiest and could not. Had they been anybody but who and what they were, he would have asked any and all of them to dance a jig or a reel. He had danced with Egwene often enough back home, even once with Nynaeve, but that seemed a long time ago. One pretty woman means fun at the dance. 2 pretty women mean trouble in the house. 3 pretty women mean a run for the hills. He gave Nynaeve an even tighter smile than her own. My dad used to say that. You're up to something, Nynaeve. You are all smiling like cats staring at a finch caught in a thorn bush. And I think I am the finch. The smiles flickered and vanished. He noticed their hands and wondered why they all looked as if they had been washing dishes. The daughter heir of Andor surely never washed a dish. And he had as hard a time imagining Nynaeve at it, even knowing she had done her own back at Emond's Field. They all three wore great serpent rings now. That was it. And not a particularly pleasant surprise. Light had to happen sometime. It's none of my business. That is all there is to it. None of my business. It just isn't. Egwene shook her head, but it seemed as much for the other 2 women as for him. I told you we should ask him straight out. He's stubborn as any mule when he wants to be. He tricks him as a cat. You are mad. You know it, so stop frowning. He put his grin back quickly. Hush, Egwene, Nynaeve said. Mad. Just because we want to ask you a favor does not mean we don't care how you feel. We do care, and you know that. Unless you're being even more wool-headed than usual. Are you well? You look remarkably well compared to how I last saw you. It really does look more like a month than 2 days. I'm ready to run 10 miles and dance a jig at the end of it. His stomach growled, reminding him how long it was to midday yet. But he ignored it and hoped they had not noticed. He almost did feel as if he had had a month of rest and food, and had 1 meal in the last day. What favor? He asked suspiciously. Nynaeve did not ask favors in his recollection. Nynaeve told people what to do and expected to see it done. I want you to carry a letter for me, Elaine said before Nynaeve could speak. To my mother in Cambridge. She smiled, making a dimple in her cheek. I would appreciate it so very much, Mary. The morning light through the windows seemed to pick out highlights in her hair. I wonder if she likes to dance. He pushed the thought right out of his head. That does not sound too very hard, but it's a long trip. What do I get out of it? From the look on her face, he did not think that dimple had failed her very often. She drew herself up, slim and proud. He could almost see a throne behind her. Are you a loyal subject of Andor? Do you not wish to serve the Lion Throne and your daughter heir? Matt snickered. I told you that would not work either, Egwene said. Not with him. Elaine had a wry twist to her mouth. I thought it worth a try. It always works on the gods in Cambridge. You said if I smile. She cut off short, very obviously not looking at him. What did you say? He thought, furious. That I'm a fool for any girl who smiles at me? He kept his outward calm, though, and managed to maintain his grin. I wish asking were enough, Egwene said. But you do not do favors, do you, Matt? Have you ever done anything without being coaxed, wheedled, or bullied? He only smiled at her. I will dance with both of you, Egwene, but I won't run errands. For an instant, he thought she was going to stick out her tongue at him. If we can go back to what we planned in the first place, Nynaeve said in a too calm voice. The other 2 nodded, and she turned their attentions on him. For the first time since coming in, she looked like the wisdom of old, with a stare that could pin you in your tracks, and her braid ready to lash like a cat's tail. You are even ruder than I remembered, Matrim Coffin. With you sick so long, and Egwene and Elaine and I taking care of you like a babe and swaddling, I had almost forgotten. Even so, I would think you'd have a little gratitude in you. You've talked about seeing the world, seeing great cities. Well, what better city than Kingman? Do what you want, show your gratitude, and help someone all at the same time. She produced a folded parchment from inside her cloak and set it on the table. It was sealed with a lily and golden yellow wax. You cannot ask for more than that. He eyed the paper. He barely remembered passing through Kingman once, but ran. It was a shame to stop him now, but he thought it best. If you want the fun of the jig, you have to pay the harper sooner or later. And the way Nynaeve was now, the longer he kept from paying, the worse it would be. Nynaeve, I can't. What do you mean you cannot? Are you a fly in the wall or a man? A chance to do a favor for the daughter heir of Andor, to see Caemlyn, to meet Queen Morghese herself in all probability, and you cannot. I really do not know what more you could possibly want. Don't you scare away like grease on a griddle this time, Matrim Coffin. Or has your heart changed so you like seeing these all around you? She waved her left hand in his face, practically hitting him in the nose with a ring. Please, Matt, Elaine said, and Egwene was staring at him as if he had grown horns like a trout. He squirmed on his chair. It is not that I don't want to, I cannot. The Amarant's made it so I can't get off the island. Change that, and I will carry your letter in my teeth, Elaine. Looks passed between them. He sometimes wondered if women could read each other's minds. They certainly seemed to read his when he least wanted it. But this time, whatever they had decided silently among themselves, they had not read his thoughts. Explain, Nynaeve said curtly. Why would the Amaran want to keep you here? He shrugged and looked her straight in the eye and gave her his best rueful grin. It's because I was sick. Because it went on so long. She said she would not let me go until she was sure I wouldn't go off somewhere and die. Not that I'm going to, of course. Die, I mean. Nynaeve frowned, jerked her braid, and suddenly took his head between her hands. A chill ran through him. Like the power. Before the thought was done, she had released him. What did you do to me, Nynaeve? Not a tenth part of what you deserve in all likelihood, she said. You are as healthy as a bull. Weaker than you look, but healthy. I told you I was, he said uneasily. He tried to get his grin back. Nynaeve, she looked like you. The Amaran, I mean. Managing to loom even if she is a foot too short for it, and bullying. The way her eyebrows climbed, he decided that was not a road to go down any further. As long as he kept them away from the horn. He wondered if they knew. Well, anyway, I think they want to keep me here because of that dagger. I mean, until they figure out exactly how it did what it did. You know how Aes Sedai are. He gave a small laugh. They all just looked at him. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Burn me, they want to be bloody Aes Sedai. Burn me, I'm going on too long. I wish Nynaeve would stop staring at me like that. Keep it short. The Amerlin made it so I cannot cross the bridge or board a ship without an order from her. You see, it's not that I do not want to help, I just can't. But you will if we can get you out of Tarvalin, Nynaeve said it gently. You get me out of Tarvalin and I'll carry Elaine to her mother on my back. Elaine's eyebrows went up this time, and Egwene shook her head, mouthing his name with a sharp look in her eyes. Women had no sense of humor sometimes. Nynaeve motioned the two of them to follow her to the windows, but they turned their backs to him and talked so softly he could catch only a murmur. He thought he heard Egwene say something about only needing one if they stayed together. Watching, he wondered if they really thought they could get around the Amaran's order. If they can do that, I will carry that bloody letter. I really will carry it in my teeth. Without thinking, he picked up an apple core and bit off the end. One chew, and he hastily spit the mouthful of bitter seeds back onto the plate. When they came back to the table, Egwene handed him a thick folded paper. He eyed them suspiciously before opening it out. As he read, he began humming to himself without knowing it. What the bearer does is done at my order and by my authority. Obey and keep silent at my command. Swan Sanche, Watcher of the Seals, Flame of Tarvalin, the Almond Seal. And sealed at the bottom with the flame of Tarvalin in a circle of white wax as hard as stone. He realized he was humming a pocket full of
Right
golden
back.
stuff. Is this real? You didn't. How did you get this? She did not forge it, if that is true, Lane said. Never you mind how he got it, Naive said. It is real. That is all that need concern you. I would not show it around were I you, or the Amelin will take it back. But it will get you past the guards and onto a ship. You said you'd take the letter if we did that. You can consider it in Morgaze's hands right now. He did not want to stop reading the paper, but he folded it back up anyway, and laid it on top of Elaine's letter. You wouldn't happen to have a little coin to go with this, would you? Some silver? A gold mark or two? I have almost enough for my passage, but I hear things are growing expensive downriver. Naive shook her head. Don't you have money? You gambled with Huron almost every night until you grew too sick to hold the dice. Why should things be more expensive downriver? We gamble for coppers, Naive. We would not even do that after a while. It doesn't matter. I will manage. Don't you listen to what people say? There's a civil war in Cairo, and I hear it is bad in Tyre, too. I have heard a room at an inn in Arengil cost more than a good horse back home. We have been busy, she said sharply, and exchanged worried looks with Egwene and Elaine that set him wondering again. It doesn't matter. I can make out. There had to be gaming in the inns near the docks. A night with the dice would put him aboard a ship in the morning with a full purse. Just you deliver that letter to Queen Morgaze, Matt, Naive said, and do not let anyone know you have it. I'll take it to her. I said I would, didn't I? You would think I didn't keep my promises. The looks he got from Nynaeve and Egwene reminded him of a few he had not kept. I will do it. But I will do it. They stayed a while longer, talking at home for the most part. Egwene and Elaine sat on the bed, and Nynaeve took the armchair while he kept his stool. Talk of Emmons Field made him homesick, and it seemed to make Nynaeve and Egwene sad, as if they were speaking of something they would never see again. He was sure their eyes moistened, but when he tried to change the subject, they brought it back again, to people they knew, to the festivals of Beltane and Sunday, the harvest dances and picnic gatherings for the shearing. Elaine talked to him of Camelot, what to expect at the royal palace, and who to speak to, and a little of the city. Sometimes she held herself in a way that made him all but see a crown on her head. A man would have to be a fool to let himself get involved with a woman like her. When they rose to leave, he was sorry to see them go. He stood, suddenly feeling awkward. Look, you have done me a favor here. He touched the omnibus paper on the table. A big favor. I know you're all going to be. I said I. He stumbled a little on it. And you will be a queen one day, Elaine. But if you ever need help, if there's anything I can do, I will come. You can count on it. Did I say something funny? Elaine had a hand over her mouth, and Egwene was struggling openly with a laugh. No, Maggie said smoothly, but her lips twitched. Just something I've observed about men. You would have to be a woman to understand it, Elaine said. Journey well and safely, Matt, Egwene said. And remember, if a woman does need a hero, she needs him today, not tomorrow. The laughter bubbled out of her. He stared at the door closing behind them. Women, he decided for at least the 100th time, were odd. Then his eyes fell on Elaine's letter and the folded paper lying atop it. The Amerlin Celeste, not to be understood, but welcome as a fire in winter paper. He danced a little caper in the middle of the flowered carpet. England to see and the Queen to meet. Your own words will bring me here, Amerlin, and get me away from Sudden too. You'll never catch me, he laughed. He meant it for both of them. You'll never catch Matt Coffin.
Chapter 29. A trap to spring. In a corner, the spit dog was lying at its ease. Glaring at it, Nynaeve mopped sweat from her forehead with her hand and leaned her back into doing the work he should have done. I'd not have put it past them to shove me in his wicker wheel instead of letting me turn this light-forsaken handle. Eyes, said I, burn them all. It was a measure of her upset that she used such language, and another that she did not even notice she had done it. She did not think the fire in the long gray stone fireplace would seem any hotter if she crawled into it. She was sure the brindle dog was grinning at him. Elaine was skimming grease out of the dripping pan into the roasts with a long-handled wooden spoon, while Egwene used its twin to baste the meat. The great kitchen went on about its midday routine around them. Even the novices had grown so used to seeing accepted there that they hardly even glanced at the three women. Not that the cooks allowed the novices to dawdle for gawking. Work built character, so the eyes that I said, and the cooks saw to it that the novices built strong character. And the three accepted too. Laras, the mistress of the kitchens, she was really the chief cook, but so many had used the honor so long that it might as well have been her title, came over to examine the roasts, and the women sweating over them. She was more than merely stout, with layers of chins, and a spotless white apron that could have made 3 novice dresses. She carried her own long-handled wooden spoon like a scepter. It was not for stirring that spoon, it was for directing those under her and smacking those who were not building character quickly enough to suit her. She studied the roasts, sniffed disparagingly, and turned her frown on the three accepted. Nynaeve met Laras's look with a level look of her own and kept turning the spit. The massive woman's face never altered. Nynaeve had tried smiling, but that did nothing to change Laras's expression. Stopping work to speak to her quite civilly had been a disaster. It was bad enough being bullied and chivvied by Aes Sedai. She had to put up with that, however much it rankled and burned, if she was to learn how to use her abilities. Not that she liked what she could do. It was one thing to know Aes Sedai were not dark friends for channeling the power, but quite another to know she herself could channel. Yet she had to learn if she was to get back at Moiraine, hating Moiraine for what she had done to Egwene and the other Emmons Fielders, pulling their lives apart and manipulating them all for Aes Sedai purposes, was nearly all that kept her going. But to be treated as a lazy, none-too-bright child by this Laras, to be forced to curtsy and scurry for this woman she could have put in her place with a few well-chosen words back home, that made her grind her teeth almost as much as did the thought of Moiraine. Maybe if I just do not look at her. No, I will be burned if I'll drop my eyes before this cow. Laura sniffed more loudly and walked away. She rolled from side to side as she crossed the freshly mopped gray tiles. Still bending with spoon and grease pot, Elaine glowered after her. If that woman strikes me but once more, I shall have Gareth Bryn arrest her and... Egwene whispered. She did not stop facing her ghosts, and she never looked at the woman. She has ears, Laris turned back as if she had indeed heard, her frown deepening and her mouth open wide. Before a sound emerged, the Amelin seat entered the kitchen like a whirlwind. Even the striped stole on her shoulders seemed to bristle. For once, Lyanna was nowhere to be seen. At last, Nynaeve thought grimly, and not before time either. But the Amelin did not glance at her. The Amelin did not say a word to her. Running her hand across the tabletop striped bone white, she looked at her fingers and grimaced as if at will. Laris was at her side in an instant, all smiles, but the Amelin's flat stare made her swallow them in silence. The Amelin stalked about the kitchen. She stared at the women slicing oatcake. She glared at the women peeling vegetables. She sneered into the soup kettles, then at the women tending them. The women became engrossed in studying the surface of the soup. Her frown set the girls carrying plates and bowls out to the dining hall to a run. Her glower put the novices darting like mice sighting a cat. By the time she had made her way half around the kitchen, every woman there was working twice as fast as she had been. By the time she completed her circuit, Laris was the only one even daring to glance at her. The Amelin stopped in front of the roasting pan, fists on her hips, and stood Laris. She only looked, expressionless, blue eyes cold and hard. The large woman gulped, and her chin wobbled as she smoothed her apron. The Amerlin did not blink. Laris's eyes dropped, and she shifted cunningly from foot to foot. "If another company," she said in a faint voice, making something that might have been meant for a curtsy. She left the room, so forgetting herself, she joined the woman one of the soup kettles and began stirring with her own spoon. Nynaeve smiled, keeping her head down to hide it. Egwene and Elaine kept working too, but they also kept glancing at the Amerlin, standing with her back to them not 2 paces away. The Amerlin was spreading her stare across the entire kitchen from where she stood. "If they are this easily cowed," she muttered softly, "perhaps they really have been getting away with too much for too long." Easily cowed indeed, Nynaeve thought. Pitiful excuses for women. All she did was look at me. The Amelin glanced over a stole-covered shoulder, caught her eye for an instant. Suddenly, Nynaeve realized she was turning the spit faster. She told herself she had to pretend to be cowed like everyone else. The Amelin's gaze fell on Elaine, and abruptly she spoke, nearly loud enough to rattle the copper pots and pans hanging on the walls. "There are some words I will not tolerate in a young woman's mouth, Elaine of House Trepan. If you let them in, I will see them scrubbed out." Everyone in the kitchen jumped. Elaine looked confused, and indignation crept across Egwene's face. Nynaeve shook her head, small, frantic shakes. "No, hold her tongue. Don't you see what she is doing?" But Egwene did open her mouth, with a respectful if determined, "Mother, she did not silence." The Amerlin's roar produced another ripple of jumps. "Laras, can you find something to teach 2 girls to speak when they should, and say what they should? Mistress of the kitchens? Can you manage that?" Laras came waddling faster than Nynaeve had ever seen the woman move before, darting at Elaine and Egwene to seize an ear of each, all the while repeating, "Yes, mother, immediately, mother. As you command, mother." She hurried the 2 young women out of the kitchen, as if eager to escape the Amerlin's stare. The Amerlin was now close enough to Nynaeve to touch her, but still looking over the kitchen. A young cook, turning with a mixing bowl in her hands, chanced to catch the Amerlin's eye. She gave a great squeak as she scuttled away across the floor. I did not mean for Egwene to be caught in that. The Amerlin barely moved her lips. It looked as if she were muttering to herself, and from the expression on her face, no one in the kitchen wanted to hear what she was saying. Nynaeve could just make out the words. Perhaps it will teach her to think before she speaks. Nynaeve turned the spit and kept her head down, trying to look as if she were also muttering under her breath if anyone looked. "I thought you were going to keep a close eye on us, Mother, so we could report what we find. If I come stare at you every day, daughter, some would grow suspicious." The Amerlin kept up her study of the kitchen. Most of the women seemed to be avoiding even looking in her direction for fear of incurring her wrath. "I plan to have you brought to my study after midday meal, to scold you for not choosing your studies, so I implied to Leander. But there is news that will not wait. Shirian found another gray man, a woman, dead as last week's fish, and not a mark on her. She was laid out as if resting, right in the middle of Shirian's bed. Not very pleasant for Shirian." Nynaeve stiffened, and the spit halted for a moment before she put it back to revolving. Shirian had a chance to see the lists Baron gave to Egwene. So did Elida. I make no accusations, but they had the chance. And Egwene said Alana behaved oddly, too. She told you of that, did she? Alana is our fellow. They have strange ideas about honor and debts in our fellow. She shrugged dismissively, but said, "I suppose I can keep an eye on her. Have you learned anything useful yet, child?" "Some," Nynaeve muttered grimly. "What about keeping an eye on Shirian? Maybe she didn't just find that gray man. The Amerlin could watch Elida too, for that matter. So Alana really did. I do not understand why you trust Elsa Grimwell, but your message was helpful." In short, quick sentences, Nynaeve told of the things they had found in a storeroom under the library, making it seem only she and Egwene had gone, and added the conclusions they had reached concerning them. She did not mention Egwene's dream, or whatever it had been. Egwene insisted it had been real, of Tel Ranguial, nor did she speak of the Ranguial Baron had given Egwene. She could not make herself entirely trust the woman wearing the seven striped sword, or any woman who could wear the shawl for that matter, and it seemed best to keep some things in reserve. When she was done, the Amelin was silent so long that Nynaeve began to think the woman had not heard. She was about to repeat herself, a little louder, when the Amelin finally spoke, still hardly moving her lips. I sent no message, Doctor. The things Leandrin and the others left were searched thoroughly and burned after nothing was found. No one would use Black Ajah needles. As for Elsa Grimwell, I remembered her. She could have learned, had she applied herself, but all she wanted was to smile at the men of the warder's practice yard. Elsa Grimwell was put on a trading vessel and sent back to her mother 10 days ago. Nynaeve tried to swallow the lump that had formed in her throat. The Amerlin's words made her think of bullies taunting smaller children. The bullies were always so contemptuous of the littler children, always so sure the small ones were too stupid to realize what was happening, that they made little effort to disguise their sneers. That the Black Ajah was so contemptuous of her made her blood boil. That they could set this snare filled her stomach with ice. Light. If Elsa was sent away, light. Anybody I talked to could be Leandrin or any of the others. Light. The spit had stopped. Hastily, she started it turning once more. No one seemed to have noticed them. They were all still doing their best not to look at the others. And what do you mean to do about this so obvious trap? The Amelin said softly, still staring over the gate away from the room. Do you mean to fall into this one too? Nynaeve's face wrinkled. I know this trap for a trap, Mother. And the best way to catch whoever set a trap is to spring it and wait for him or her to come. It sounded weaker than it had when she had said it to Egwene and Elaine after what the Amelin had just told her, but she still meant it. Perhaps so, child. Perhaps it is the way to think. If they do not come and find you held tightly in their net. She gave a vexed sigh. I will put gold in your room for the journey. And I will let it be whispered about that I've sent you out to a farm to help captives. Will Elaine be going with you? Nynaeve forgot herself enough to stare at the Amelin, then hurriedly put her eyes back on her hands. Her knuckles were white and you scheming or why all the pretense of you? Your sly plots have us squirming nearly as much as the Black Ajah has. Why? The Amelin's face had tightened enough to make her force a more respectful tone. If I may ask. The Amelin snorted, putting more graves back on the proper path, whether she wants to hard enough without her thinking I've sent her daughter to sea in a leaky skiff. This way I can say straight out that it was none of my doing. It may be a bit hard on Elaine when she finally has to face her mother, but I have 3 hands now, not 2. I told you I'd have 100 if I could. She adjusted her stole on her shoulders. This has gone on long enough. If I stay this close to you, it may be noticed. Have you anything more to tell me, or to ask? Make it quick, Doctor. What is Calendar, Mother? Nynaeve asked. This time it was the Amelin who forgot herself, half turning toward Nynaeve before jerking herself back. They cannot be allowed to have that. Her whisper was barely audible, as if meant for her own ears alone. They cannot possibly take it. She took a deep breath, and her soft words firmed enough to be clear to Nynaeve, if to no one 2 paces further away. No more than a dozen women in the tower know what Calendar is, and perhaps as many outside. The High Lords of Tyr know, but they never speak of it except when a lord of the land is told on being raised. The sword that cannot be touched is a Sangreal girl. Only 2 more powerful were ever made, and thank to light neither of those was ever used. With Calendar in your hands, child, you could level the city at one blow. If you die keeping that out of the Black Ajah's hands, you and Egwene and Elaine, all 3, will have done a service to the whole world at cheap price. How could they take it? Nynaeve asked. I thought only the dragon Reborn could touch Calumny. The Amerlin gave her a sideways look sharp enough to carve the roasts on the spit. They could be after something else, she said after a moment. They stole Turangrial here. The Stone of Tyr holds nearly as many Turangrial as the Tower. I thought the High Lords hated anything to do with the One Power, Nynaeve whispered incredulously. Oh, they do hate it, child. Hate it and fear it. When they find a Tyran girl who can channel, they bundle her onto a ship for Tar Valon before the day is done, hardly time to speak goodbyes to her family. The Amelin's murmur was bitter with memory. Yet they hold one of the most powerful focuses of the power the world has ever seen inside their precious stone. It is my belief that is why they have collected so many Turangrial, and indeed anything to do with the power, over the years, as if by doing so they can diminish the existence of the thing they cannot rid themselves of, the thing that reminds them of their own doom every time they enter the heart of the stone. Their fortress of 100 armies will fall as one of the signs the dragon is reborn. Not even the only sign, just one. How that must rankle their proud hearts. Their downfall will not even be the one great sign of the world's change. They cannot even ignore it by staying out of the heart. That is where lords of the land are raised to high lords, and where they must perform what they call the rite of the garden 4 times a year, claiming that they guard the whole world against the dragon by holding Calendar. It must bite at their souls like a bellyful of live silver pike, and no more than they deserve. She gave herself a shake, as if realizing she had said far more than she had intended. Is that all, child? Yes, ma'am, Nynaeve said. But it always comes back to Gran, doesn't it? Always back to the dragon within. It was still an effort to think of him that way. That's all. The Amelin shifted her gaze again, frowning at the frenzied scurry in the kitchen. I'll have to set this aside. I needed to speak to you without delay, but Laris is a good woman, and she manages the kitchen and the larder as well. Nynaeve sniffed and addressed her hands on the spit handle. Laris is a sour lump of law, and too heavy with that spoon by half. She thought she had muttered it under her breath, but she heard the Amelin chuckle right. You are a fine judge of character, child. You must have done well as the wisdom of your village. It was Laris who went to Shiriam and demanded to know how long you 3 are to be kept to the dirtiest and hardest work, without a turn at life. She said she would not be the party to breaking any woman's health or spirit, no matter what I said. A fine judge of character, child. Laris came back into the kitchen doorway then, hesitating to enter her own domain. The Amerlin went to meet her, smiles replacing her frowns and stares. It all looks very well to me, Laris. The Amerlin's words came out loud enough for the entire kitchen to hear. I see nothing out of place and everything as it should be. You are to be commended. I think I will make Mistress of the Kitchens a formal title. The stout woman's face fluttered from uneasiness to shock to beaming pleasure. By the time the Amelin swept out of the kitchen, Laris was all smiles. Her frown returned, though, as she looked from the Amelin's departing back to her workers. The kitchen seemed to leap into motion. Laris's grim stare settled on Nynaeve. Turning the spit again, Nynaeve tried smiling at the big woman. Laris's frown deepened, and she began tapping her spoon on her thigh, apparently forgetting that for once it had been used for its intended purpose. It left smears of soup on the white plate. I will smile at her if it kills me, Nynaeve thought, though she had to grit her teeth to do it. Egwene and Elaine appeared, twisting their faces and scrubbing their mouths with their sleeves. At a stare from Laris, they dashed to the spit and resumed their labors. So, Elaine muttered thickly, tastes horrid. Egwene trembled as she spooned juice from the dripping pan over the roasts. Nynaeve, if you tell me the Amelin told us to stay here, I will scream. I might run away for real. We'll leave after the washing up is done, she told them. just as quickly as we can fetch our belongings from our rooms. She wished she could share the eagerness that flashed in their eyes. Lights send we aren't walking into a trap we can't get out of. Lights send it so.
Chapter 30. The First Talks. After Nynaeve and the others left him, Matt spent most of the day in his room, except for one brief excursion. He was planning and eating. He ate nearly everything the serving women brought in and asked for more. They were more than happy to oblige. It was bread and cheese and fruit he asked for. He piled winter-wrinkled apples and pears, wedges of cheese, and loaves of bread inside the wardrobe, leaving empty trays for them to take away. At midday, he had to endure a visit from an Aes Sedai, Anaya, he seemed to remember her name was. She put her hands on his head and sent cold chills through him. It was the one power, he decided, not simply being touched by an Aes Sedai. She was a plain woman, despite her smooth
Hope
cheeks.
everyone's doing good out there today.
You seem much better, she told him, smiling. Her smile made him think of his mother. Even hungrier than I expected, so I hear, but better. I am informed you are trying to eat the larders bare. Believe me when I say we will see you have all the food you need. You do not have to worry that we will let you miss a meal before you are fully well again. He gave the grin he used on his mother when he especially wanted her to believe it. I know you won't, and I do feel better. I thought I might see some of the city this afternoon, if you have no objection. Maybe visit an inn tonight? There's nothing like a night of common room talk to pick one's spirits up. He thought her lips twitched on the edge of a bigger smile. But do not. It will only upset the guards and bring you nothing but a trip back here under escort. I would not do that, Aes Sedai. The Amarylline Seat said I'd starve to death in a few days if I left. She nodded as if she did not believe a word he said. Of course.
There's
As
round
she
one,
turned
though.
from him, her eyes fell on the quarterstaff he had brought from the practice yard, propped in the corner of the room. You do not need to protect yourself from us, Matt. You are as safe here as you could be anywhere. Almost certainly safer. Oh, I know that, I said. I do. After she left, he frowned at the door, wondering if he had managed to convince her of anything. It was more evening than afternoon when he left the room for what he hoped was the final time. The sky was purpling. The setting sun painted clouds to the west in shades of red. Once he had his cloak around him, and the big leather script he had found on one earlier foray dangling from his shoulder, and bulging with bread and cheese and fruit he had squirreled away, one look in the mirror told him there was no hiding what he intended. He tied the rest of his clothes up in a roll with the blanket from the bed, and slung that across his shoulders too. The quarterstaff did for a walking staff. He left nothing behind. His coat pockets held all his smaller belongings, and his belt pouch held the most important. The Amarylline Seat's paper, Elaine's letter, and his dice cups. He saw Aes Sedai as he made his way out of the tower, and some of them noticed him, though most merely flickered an eyebrow, and none spoke to him. Anaya was one. She gave him an amused smile and a rueful shake. He returned a shrug and the guiltiest grin he could manage, and she went silently on, still shaking her head. The guards at the tower gates simply looked at him. It was not until he was across the big square and into the streets of the city that relief finally surged up in him. And triumph. If you can't hide what you are going to do it so everybody thinks you are a fool. Then they stand around waiting to see you fall on your face. Those Aes Sedai will be waiting for the guards to bring me back. When I do not return by morning, then they'll start a search. Not too frantic at first, because they'll think I have gone to ground somewhere in the city. By the time they realize I haven't, this rabbit will be a long way down river from the hounds. With as light a heart as he could remember having in years, or so it seemed, he began to hum, "We're over the border again," heading toward the harbor where vessels would be sailing down to Tyr, and all the villages along the Erin in between. He would not be going so far as that, of course. Arengil, where he would take the land again for the rest of the trip to Camelin, was only halfway downriver. "I'll deliver your bloody letter," The nerve of her thinking I'd say I would, then not. I will deliver the bloody thing if it kills me. Twilight was beginning to cover Tarvalin, but there was still enough light to grace the fantastical buildings, the oddly shaped towers connected by high bridges spanning open air over 100-pace drops. People yet filled the streets in so many different kinds of clothing that he thought every nation must be represented. Along the major avenues, pairs of lamplighters used their ladders to light lanterns atop tall poles. But in the part of Tarvalin he sought, the only light was what spilled from windows. Ogier had built the great buildings and towers of Tarvalin, but other newer parts had grown under the hands of men. Newer than 2,000 years in some cases. Down near South Harbor, men's hands had tried to match, if not duplicate, the fanciful Ogier work. Inns where ship's crews caroused bore enough stonework for palaces. Statues in niches and cupolas on rooftops, ornately worked cornices, and intricately carved friezes all decorated chandlers' shops and merchant houses. Bridges arched across the streets here, too, but the streets were cobblestone, not great paving blocks. And many of the bridges were wood instead of stone, sometimes as low as the second stories of the buildings they joined, and never higher than 4. The dark streets hummed with as much life as any in Tarvalin. Traders off their vessels and those who bought what the vessels carried, people who traveled the river Erin, and people who worked it, all filled the taverns and common rooms of the inns, in company with those who sought the money such folk carried, by fair means or murky. Raucous music filled the streets from bittern and flute, harp and hammered dulcimer. The first inn Matt entered had 3 dice games in progress, men crouched in circles near the common room walls and shouting the wins and losses. He only meant to gamble an hour or so before finding a ship, just long enough to add a few coins to his purse, but he won. He had always won more than he lost, as far as he could remember, and there had been times with Huron and in Shinar when 6 or 8 tosses in a row won for him. Tonight, every toss won. Every toss. From the look some of the men gave him, he was glad he had left his own dice in his pouch. Those looks made him decide to move on. With surprise, he realized that he had nearly 30 silver marks in his purse now, but he had not won so much from any one man that they would not all be glad to see him go. Except for one dark sailor with tight curls, one of the sea folk, someone had said. Though Matt wondered what one of the Athawanier was doing so far from the sea, who followed him down the darkened street, arguing for a chance to make good his losses. He wanted to reach the docks. 30 silver marks was more than enough. But the sailor argued on, and he had only used half his hour. So he gave in, and with the man entered the next tavern they passed. He won again, and it was as if a fever gripped him. He won every throw. From tavern to inn to tavern he went, never staying long enough to anger anyone with the amount of his winnings. And he still won every toss. He exchanged silver for gold with a money changer. He played at crowns and 5s and maiden's ruin. He played games with 5 dice and with 4 and with 3, and even only 2. He played games he did not know before he squatted in the circle or took a place at the table. And he won. Somewhere during the night, the dark sailor, Rob, he had said his name was, staggered away, exhausted, but with a full purse. He had decided to put his wagers on Matt. Matt visited another money changer, or perhaps 2. The fever seemed to cloud his brain as badly as his memories of the past were clouded, and made his way to another game, winning. And so he found himself, he did not know how many hours later, in a tavern filled with tobacco smoke, the Tremulking Splice, he thought it was called, staring down at 5 dice, each showing a deeply carved crown. Most of the patrons here seemed interested only in drinking as much as they could, but the rattle of dice and the shouts of players from another game in the far corner were almost submerged by a woman singing to a quick tune from a hammered dulcimer. I'll dance with a girl with eyes of brown, or a girl with eyes of green. I'll dance with a girl with any color eyes, but yours are the prettiest I've seen. I'll kiss a girl with hair of black, or a girl with hair of gold. I'll kiss a girl with any color hair, but it's you I want to hold. The singer had named the song as What He Said to Me. Matt remembered the tune as "Will You Dance With Me" with different words, but at that moment, all he could think of were those dice. The king again, one of the men squatting with Matt muttered. It was the 5th time in a row Matt had thrown the king. He had won the bet of a gold mark, not even caring at this time.
I'll be right back.
Mark outweighed the other man's Ileana coin. But he scooped the dice into the leather cup, rattled it hard, and spun them across the floor again. 5 crowns. It can't be. Nobody ever threw the king 6 times running. Nobody. The dark one's own luck, another man growled. He was a bulky fellow, his dark hair tied at the nape of his neck with a black ribbon, with heavy shoulders, scars on his face, and a nose that had been broken more than once. Matt was scarcely aware of moving before he had the bulky man by the collar, hauling him to his feet, slamming him back against the wall. Don't you say that, he snarled. Don't you ever say that. The man blinked down at him in astonishment. He was a full head taller than Matt. Just a saying, somebody behind him was muttering. Why, it's just a saying. Matt released his grip on the scar-faced man's coat and backed away. I don't like anybody saying things like that about me. I'm no dark friend. Aren't you? Not the dark one's luck. Not that. Oh, light. Did that bloody dagger really do something to me? Nobody said you was, the broken-nosed man muttered. He seemed to be getting over his surprise and trying to decide whether to be angry. Gathering his belongings from where he had piled them behind him, Matt walked out of the tavern, leaving the coins where they lay. It was not that he was afraid of the big man. He had forgotten them, and the coins, too. All he wanted was to be outside in fresh air where he could think. In the street, he leaned against the wall of the tavern, not far from the door, breathing the coolness in. The dark streets of South Harbor were all but empty now. Music and laughter still floated from the inns and taverns, but few people made their way through the night. Holding the quarterstaff upright in front of him with both hands, he lowered his head to his fists and tried to think of the puzzle from every side. He knew he was lucky. He could remember always being lucky. But somehow his memories from Emmons Field did not show him as lucky as he had been since leaving. Certainly he had gotten away with a great deal, but he could remember also being caught, pranks he had been sure would succeed. His mother had always seemed to know what he was up to, and Nynaeve able to see through whatever defenses he put up. But it was not just since leaving the Two Rivers that he had become lucky. The luck had come once he took the dagger from Shadar-Logoth. He remembered playing at dice back home with a sharp-eyed, skinny man who worked for a merchant come down from Bearlawn to buy tobacco. He remembered the strapping his father had given him, too, on learning Matt owed the man a silver mark and 4 pence. But I'm free of the bloody dagger, he mumbled. Those bloody Aes Sedai said I was. He wondered how much he had won tonight. When he dug into his coat pockets, he found them filled with loose coins. Browns and marks, both silver and gold, that glittered and glinted in the light from nearby windows. He had 2 purses now, it seemed, and both that. He undid the strings and found more gold. And still more stuffed in his belt pouch, between and around and on top of his dice cups, crumpling Elaine's letter and the Amelin's paper. He had a memory of tossing silver pence to serving girls because they had pretty smiles, or pretty eyes, or pretty ankles, and because silver pence were not worth keeping. Not worth keeping? Maybe they weren't. Why, I'm rich. I'm bloody rich. Maybe it was something the Aes Sedai did. Something they did healing me. By accident, maybe. That could be it. Better than the other. Those bloody Aes Sedai must have done it to me. A big man moved out from the tavern, the door already swinging shut to cut off the light that might have shown his face. Matt pressed his back close against the wall, stuffed the purses back into his coat, and firmed his grip on the quarterstaff. Wherever his luck tonight had come from, he did not mean to lose all that gold to a footpad. The man turned toward him, peered, then gave a start. Cool night, he said drunkenly. He staggered closer, and Matt saw that most of his size was fat. I have to. Stumbling, the fat man moved on up the street, talking to himself disjointedly. Fool, Matt muttered, but he was not sure whether he meant it for the fat man or for himself. Trying to find a ship to take me away from here. He squinted at the black sky, trying to estimate how long till dawn. 2, maybe 3 hours, he thought. Past time. His stomach growled at him. He dimly recalled eating in some of the inns, but he did not remember what. The fever of the dice had him by the throat. A hand pushed into the script found only crumbs. Way past time. Or one of them will come pick me up with her fingers and stick me in her pouch. He pushed away from the wall and started for the docks where the ships would be. At first he thought the faint sounds behind him were echoes of his boots on the cobblestones. Then he realized someone was following him. And trying to be stealthy. Well, these are footpads for sure. Hefting a quarterstaff, he briefly considered turning to confront them. But it was dark and the footing on cobblestones uncertain, and he had no idea how many there were. Just because you did well against Gowan and Goliath doesn't make you a bloody hero out of the story. He turned down a narrower, twisting side street, trying to walk on tiptoe and move quickly at the same time. Every window was dark here, and most shuttered. He was almost to the end when he saw movement ahead. 2 men peering into the side street from where it led out onto another. And he heard slow footsteps behind him, soft scrapes of boot leather on stone. In an instant, he ducked into the shadowy corner where one building stuck out further than the next. It seemed the best he could do for the moment. Gripping the quarterstaff nervously, he waited. A man appeared from back the way he had come, crouching as he eased himself ahead one slow step at a time. And then another man. Each carried a knife in his hand and moved as if stalking. Matt tensed. If they came just a few steps closer, before they noticed him hiding in the deeper shadows of the corner, he could take them by surprise. He wished his stomach would stop fluttering. Those knives were a great deal shorter than the practice swords. They were steel, not wood. One of the men squinted toward the far end of the narrow street and suddenly straightened, shouting, "Didn't he come your way, then?" "I have seen nothing but the shadows," came the answer in a heavy accent. "I wish to be out of this. There are the strange things moving this night." Not 4 paces from Matt, the 2 men exchanged looks, sheathed their knives, and trotted back the way they had come. He let out a long, slow breath. Look, burn me if it's not good for more than dice. He could no longer see the men at the mouth of the street, but he knew they were still out on the next street somewhere, and more behind him the other way. One of the buildings he was crouched against stood only a single story high here, and the roof looked flat enough. And a white stone frieze carved in huge grape leaves ran up the joining of the 2 buildings. Easing his quarterstaff up until one end rested on the edge of the roof, he gave it a hard shove. It landed with a clatter on the roof tiles. Not waiting to see if anyone had heard, he scrambled up the frieze, the big leaves giving easy toe holds even for a man in boots. In seconds, he had the staff back in hand and was trotting across the roof, trusting to luck for his footing. 3 more times he climbed, each time gaining 1 story. The slightly sloping tiled roofs ran some distance at that level, and there was a breeze at that height, prickling the hair on the back of his neck with its chill, and almost making him think he was being followed. Stop that fool. They're 3 streets away by now, looking for somebody else with a fat purse. Bad luck to them. His boots slipped on the tiles, and he decided it might be a good idea to think about getting back down into the street himself. Cautiously, he moved to the edge of the roof and peered down. An empty street lay a good 40 feet or more below him, with 3 taverns and an inn spilling light and music onto the cobblestones. But off to his right was a stone bridge running from the top floor of his building to one on the other side. The bridge looked awfully narrow, running through darkness untouched by the tavern lights, arcing over a long fall to hard cobblestones. But he tossed the quarterstaff down and made himself follow before he could think about it too much. His boots thumped onto the bridge, and he let himself roll the way he had as a boy falling out of a tree. He fetched up against the waist-high railing. Bad habits pay off in the long run, he told himself, as he got to his feet and picked up the staff. The window at the other end of the bridge was tightly shuttered and lightless. He did not think whoever lived in there would appreciate a stranger appearing in the middle of the night. He could see lots of stonework, but if there was as much as a finger hold in the reach of the bridge, the night hid it. Well, stranger or no stranger, inside I go. He turned from the railing and suddenly became aware of a man sharing the bridge with him. A man with a dagger in his hand. Matt grabbed at the hand as the knife darted toward his throat. He barely caught the fellow's wrist with his fingers, and then the quarterstaff between them tangled itself in his legs, tripping him to fall back against the railing, to fall half over it, pulling the other man on top of him. Balanced there on the small of his back, teetering with his assailant's bared teeth in his face, he was as aware of the long drop under his head as he was of the blade catching faint moonlight as it edged toward his throat. His finger grip on the man's wrist was slipping, and his other hand was caught with the quarterstaff between their bodies. Only seconds had passed since he first saw the man, and in seconds more he was going to die with a knife in his throat. "Time to toss the dice," he said. He thought the other man looked confused for an instant, but an instant was all he had. With a heave of his legs, Matt flipped them both off into the empty air. For a stretched-out moment, he seemed to have no weight. Air whistled past his ears and ruffled his hair. He thought he heard the other man scream, or start to. The impact knocked all the air out of his lungs and made silver-black flecks dance across his blurring vision. When he could breathe again, and see, he realized he was lying on top of the man who had attacked him, his fall cushioned by the other's body. "Look," he whispered. Slowly he climbed to his feet, cursing the bruise the quarterstaff had put across his ribs. He expected the other man to be dead. Not many could survive a 30-foot fall to cobblestones with another's weight on top of him. But what he had not expected was to see the fellow's dagger driven to the hilt into his own heart. Such an ordinary-looking man to have tried to kill him. Matt did not think he would even have noticed him in a crowded room. "You had bad luck, fellow," he told the corpse shakily. Suddenly, everything that had happened rushed back in on him. The footpads in the twisting street, the scramble over the rooftops, this fellow, the fall. His eyes rose to the bridge overhead, and a fit of trembling hit him. I must have been crazy. A little adventure is one thing, but roguish eagle-eye wouldn't ask for this. He realized he was standing over a dead man with a dagger in his chest, just waiting for someone to come along and run shouting for city guards with the flame of Tarvalin on their chests. The Oberlin's paper might get him away from them, but maybe not before she found out. He could still end up back in the White Tower without that paper, possibly not even allowed outside the tower grounds. He knew he should be on his way to the docks right then, and on the first vessel sailing, it was a rotten tub full of old fish. But his knees were shaking hard enough in reaction that he could hardly walk. And what he wanted was to sit down for just a minute. Just a minute to steady his knees. And then he was headed for the docks. The taverns were closer, but he started toward the inn. The common room of an inn was a friendly place where a man could rest a minute and not worry about who might be sneaking up behind him. Enough light came out through the windows for him to make out the sign. A woman with her hair in braids, holding what he thought was an olive branch, and the words, "The Woman of Tonchico." Chapter 31. The Woman of Tonchico. The common room of the inn was brightly lit, the tables not near a quarter full so late. A few white-aproned serving women with mugs of ale or wine passed among the men, and a low murmur of talk ran under the sound of a harp being strummed and plucked. The patrons, some with pipes clenched in their teeth, and one pair hunched over a stones board, had the look of ship's officers and minor merchants from the smaller houses, their coats well cut and of fine wool, but with none of the gold or silver or embroidery that richer men might have had. And for once there was no clack and rattle of dice to be heard. Fires blazed on the long hearths at the ends of the room, but even without those, there would have been a warm feeling about the place. The harper stood on a tabletop, reciting Mara and the Three Foolish Kings to the music of his harp. His instrument, all worked in gold and silver, was fit for a palace. Matt knew it. He had saved Matt's life once. The harper was a lean man who would have been tall except for a stoop, and he moved with a limp when he shifted his footing on the tabletop. Even here inside, he wore his cloak, all covered with fluttering patches in 100 colors. He always wanted everyone to know he was a gleeman. His long mustaches and bushy eyebrows were as snow white as the thick hair on his head, and his blue eyes held a look of sorrow as he recited. The look was as unexpected as the man. Matt had never known Tom Maryland to be a sorrowful man. He took a table, setting his things on the floor by his stool, and ordered 2 mugs. The pretty young serving girl's big brown eyes twinkled at him. "True, young master. You do not look such a hard-drinking man as that." Her voice held a mischievous edge of laughter. After rummaging a bit, he brought out 2 silver pennies from his pocket. One more than paid for the wine, but he slipped her another
Be
for
right
her
back.
eyes. "My friend will be joining me." He knew Tom had seen him. The old gleeman had nearly stopped the story dead when Matt came in. That was new, too. Few things startled Tom enough for him to let it show, and nothing short of Trollocs had ever made him stop a story in the middle that Matt knew. When the girl brought the wine and his coppers and change, he let the pewter mugs sit and listened to the end of the story. "It was as we have said it should be," said King Fatal, trying to untangle a fish from his long beard. Tom's voice seemed to almost echo inside a great hall, not an ordinary common room. His plucked harp sounded the 3 kings' final foolishness. "It was as we said it would be," announced Orander, and feet slipping in the mud, he sat down with a great splash. "It was as we said it must be," proclaimed Kadar, as he searched up to his elbows in the river for his crown. "The woman knows not whereof she speaks. She is the fool." Milo and Orander agreed with him loudly. With that, Mara had had enough. "I've given them all the chances they deserve, and more," she murmured to herself. Slipping Kadar's crown into her bag with the first 2, she climbed back onto her cart, clutched to her mare, and drove straight back to her village. And when Mara had told them all that happened, the people of Heath would have no king at all. He strummed the major theme of the king's foolishness once more, this time sliding to a crescendo that sounded even more like laughter, made a sweeping bow, and nearly fell off the table. Men laughed and stamped their feet, though likely every one of them had heard the story many times before, and called for more. The story of Mara was always well received, except perhaps by kings. Tom nearly fell again climbing down from the table. He was more unsteady in his walk than a somewhat stiff leg could account for as he came to where Matt was sitting. Casually putting his harp on the table, he dropped onto a stool in front of the second mug and gave Matt a flat stare. His eyes had always been sharp as owls, but they seemed to be having trouble focusing. "Come," he muttered. His voice was still deep, but it no longer seemed to reverberate. "The tale is 100 times better in plain chant and 1,000 in high, but they want common." Without another word, he buried his face in his wine. Matt could not recall ever seeing Tom finish playing that harp without immediately putting it away in its hard leather case. He had never seen him the worse for drink. It was a relief to hear the gleeman complaining about his listeners. Tom never thought their standards were as high as his. At least something of it had not changed. The serving girl was back with no twinkle in her eyes. "Oh, Tom," she said softly, then rounded on Matt. "If I'd known he was the friend you awaited, I'd not have brought you wine for him if you give me 100 silver pence." "I did not know he was drunk," Matt protested. But her attention was back on Tom. Her voice said, "Tom, you need some rest. You'll have stories all night and all day if you let them." Another woman appeared on Tom's other side, lifting her apron off over her head. She was older than the first, but no less pretty. The 2 might have been sisters. "A beautiful story, I've always thought, Tom. And you tell it beautifully. Come, I've slipped the warming pan into your bed, and you can tell me all about the court and king." Tom peered into the mug as if surprised to find it empty, then blew out his long mustaches and looked from one woman to the other. "Pretty maiden, pretty sow. That 2 pretty women have loved me. That is more than most men can claim." "You've told us all about it," the elder woman said sadly. glared at Matt as if this were all true. Morgaze had a temper. I could ignore that. They're wanting to kill me. Dina, killed as good as. Not much difference. 2 chances I've had, more than most, and I threw them both away. I will take care of him, Matt said. Maida and Sal were both glaring at him now. He gave them his best smile, but it did not work. His stomach muttered loudly. Don't I smell chicken roasting? Bring me 3 or 4. The 2 women blinked and exchanged startled looks when he asked, Do you want something to eat too, Tom? Do with more of this fine Andorran wine. Queen raised the cup hopefully. No more wine for you tonight, Tom. The older woman would have taken his cup if he had let her. Almost on top of the first woman, the younger said in a mixture of firmness and pleading, You'll have some chicken, Tom. It is very good. Neither would leave until the Gleeman agreed to eat something, and when they did go, they gave Matt such a combination of stares and sniffs that he could only shake his head. You would think I was encouraging him to drink more. Women with pretty eyes and apparently. Rand said you were alive, he told Tom when Maida and Sal were out of hearing. Lorraine always said she thought you were. But I heard you were in Kyrian, and meaning to go on to Tyr. Rand is still well then. Tom's eyes sharpened to almost the keenness Matt remembered. I'm not sure I expected that. Lorraine is still with him, is she? Fine-looking woman. Fine woman if she were not Aes Sedai. Not with that sort, you get more than your fingers burned. Why wouldn't you expect Rand to be all right? Matt asked carefully. You know of something that could harm him? No. I don't know anything, boy. I suspect more than is healthy for me, but I know nothing. Matt abandoned that line of talk. No use firming his suspicions. No use letting him know I know more than is healthy myself. The older woman, Tom called her Maida, came back with 3 chickens with crisp brown skins, giving the white-haired man a worried look and Matt a warning one before she left. Matt ripped off a leg and set to as he talked. Tom frowned into his cup and never looked at the birds. Why are you here in Tarvalin, Tom? It's the last place I'd have expected to see you, the way you feel about Aes Sedai. I heard you were coining money in Kyrian. Kyrian, the old Gleeman muttered, the sharpness fading from his eyes again. Such trouble causes killing a man, even when he deserves killing. He made a flourish with one hand and was holding a knife. Tom always had knives secreted about him. Drunk he might have been, but he held the blade steady enough. Kill a man who needs killing. Sometimes others pay for it. The question is, was it worth doing anyway? There's always a balance, you know. Good and evil, light and shadow. We would not be human if there wasn't a balance. Put that away, Matt growled around a mouthful. I don't want to talk about killing. Why, that fellow is still alive right out there in the street. Ernie ought to be on a ship by now. I just asked why you're in Tarvalin. If you had to leave Kyrian because you killed someone. I do not want to know about it. Blood and ashes, if you can't pull your wits out of the wine enough to talk straight, I'll leave now. With a sour look, Tom made the knife disappear. Why am I in Tarvalin? I'm here because it is the worst place I could be. Except maybe Kingland. It's what I deserve, boy. Some of the Red Adja still remember me. I saw Elida in the street the other day. If she knew I was here, she would peel my hide off in strips, and then she would stop being pleasant. I never knew you to feel sorry for yourself, Matt said disgustedly. Do you mean to drown yourself in wine? What do you know of it, boy? Tom snarled. Put a few years on you, see something of life, maybe love a woman or two, and then you'll know. Perhaps you will if you have the brains to learn. Ah, you want to know why I'm in Tarvalin? Why are you in Tarvalin? I remember you shivering when you found out Moraine was Aes Sedai. You nearly soiled yourself every time anybody even mentioned the power. What are you doing in Tarvalin, with Aes Sedai on every side? I am leaving Tarvalin. That's what I am doing here. Leaving. Matt grimaced. The Gleeman had saved his life, and maybe more. The fate had been involved. That was why Tom's right leg did not work as well as it should. There could not be enough wine on a ship to keep him this drunk. I'm going to Camelin, Tom. If you need to risk your fool life for some reason, why not come with me? Okay, Tom said musingly. Camelin, Tom. Elida will be likely going back there sooner or later,
There's number 2
so you
there.
have her to worry about. And from what I remember, if Morghese puts her hands on you, you'll wish Elida had you. Rain. Yes. Camelin fit my mood like a glove. The Gleeman glanced at the chicken platter and gave a start. What did you do, boy? Stuff them up your sleeve? There was nothing left of the 3 birds but bones and carcasses with only a few strips of flesh remaining. Sometimes I get hungry, Matt muttered. It was an effort not to lick his fingers. Are you coming with me or not? Oh, I will come, boy. As Tom pushed himself to his feet, he did not seem as unsteady as he had been. You wait here. And try not to eat the table while I get my things and say some goodbyes. He limped away, not staggering once. Matt drank a little of his wine and stripped off a few shreds that were left in the chicken carcasses, wondering if he had time to order another. But Tom was back quickly. His harp and flute in their dark leather cases hung on his back with a tied blanket roll. He carried a plain walking staff as tall as he was. The 2 serving women followed on either side. Matt decided they were sisters. Identical big brown eyes looked up at the Gleeman with identical expressions. Tom was kissing first Saul, then Maida, and patting cheeks as he headed for the door, jerking his head for Matt to follow. He was outside before Matt could finish collecting his own belongings and pick up his quarterstaff. The younger of the 2 women, Saul, stopped Matt as he reached the door. Whatever you said to him, I forgive you for the wine, even if it is taking him away. I've not seen him this alive in weeks. She pressed something into his hand, and when he glanced at it, his eyes widened in confusion. She had given him a silver Tarvalin mark. For whatever it was you said. Besides, whoever is feeding you is not doing a good job of it. But you still have pretty eyes. She laughed at the expression on his face. Matt was laughing too, in spite of himself, as he went out into the street, rolling the silver coin across the backs of his fingers. So I have pretty eyes. His laughter shut off like the last drip from a wine barrel. Tom was there, but not the corpse. The windows of the taverns down the street put enough light across the cobblestones for him to be sure of it. The city guard would not have carried a dead man away without asking questions at those taverns, and at the woman of Tanchico, too. What are you staring at, boy? Tom asked. No Trollocs in those shadows. Footpads, Matt muttered. I was thinking about footpads. No street thieves or strong-arms in Tarvalin either, boy. When the guards take a footpad, not that many try that game here, the word spreads. But when they do, they haul him to the tower. And whatever it is the Aes Sedai do to him, the fellow leaves Tarvalin the next day as wide-eyed as a goosed girl. I understand they're even harder on women caught thieving. No, the only way you'll have your money stolen here is somebody selling you polished brass for gold or using shaved dice. There are no footpads. Matt turned on his heel and strode past Tom, heading toward the docks, quarterstaff thumping off the cobblestones, as if he could push himself ahead faster. We're going to be on the first ship sailing, whatever it is. The first, Tom. Tom's stick clicked hurriedly after him. Slow down, boy. What's your hurry? There are plenty of ships sailing day and night. Slow down. There aren't any footpads. The first bloody ship, Tom. If it's sinking, we'll be on it. They weren't footpads, what were they? They had to be thieves. What else could they be? Chapter 32. The first ship. South Harbor itself, the great Ogier-made basin, was huge and round, surrounded by high walls of the same silver-streaked white stone as the rest of Tarvalin. One long wharf, most of it roofed, ran all the way around except where the wide water gates stood open to give access to the river. Vessels of every size lined the wharf, most moored by the stern, and despite the hour, dockmen in coarse, sleeveless shirts hurried about loading and unloading bales and chests, crates and barrels, with ropes and booms or onto their backs. Lamps hanging from the roof beams lit the wharfs and made a band of light around the black water in the middle of the harbor. Small open boats scuttled through the darkness, the square lanterns atop their tall stern posts making it seem as if fireflies skittered across the harbor. They were small only compared to the ships, though. Some had as many as 6 pairs of long oars. When Matt led a still muttering Tom under an arch of polished redstone down broad steps to the wharf, crewmen on one three-masted ship were unfastening the mooring lines not 20 paces away. The vessel was larger than most Matt could see, between 15 and 20 spans, from sharp bow to squared stern, with a flat, railed deck almost level with the wharf. The most important thing was that it was casting off. The first ship that sails. A gray-haired man came up the wharf. 3 lines of hemp rope, sewn down the sleeves of his dark coat, marked him as a dockmaster. His wide shoulders suggested that he might have begun as a dockman, hauling rope instead of wearing it. He glanced casually in Matt's direction and stopped, surprise on his leathery face. "Your bundles say what you're planning, lad, but you might as well forget it. The sister showed me a drawing of you. You're aboard no ship in South Harbor, lad. Go back up those stairs so I don't have to tell a man off to watch you." "What under the light?" Tom murmured. "That's all changed," Matt said firmly. The ship was casting off the last mooring line. The furled triangular sails still made thick, pale bundles in the long, slanted booms, but men were readying the sweeps. He pulled the Amelin's paper out of his pouch and thrust it in the dockmaster's face. "As you can see, I'm on the business of the tower, at the order of the Amelin seat herself, and I have to leave on that very vessel there." The dockmaster read the words, then read them again. "I never saw such a thing in my life. Why would the tower say you couldn't go, then give you that?" "Ask the Amelin if you want," Matt told him in a weary voice that said he did not think anyone could possibly be stupid enough to do that. "But she'll have my hide and yours if I do not sail on that ship." "You'll never make it," the dockmaster said, but he was already cupping his hands to his mouth. "Aboard the Grey Gull there! Stop! The light burn you, stop!" The shirtless fellow at the tiller looked back, then spoke to a tall companion in a dark coat with puffy sleeves. The tall man never took his eyes off the crewman, just dipping the sweeps into the water. "Give way together," he called, and the sweep blades curled up froth. "I'll make it," Matt snapped. "The first ship I said, and the first ship I meant. Come on, Tom." Without waiting to see if the gleeman followed, he ran down the wharf, dodging around men and barrows stacked with cargo. The gap between the Grey Gull's stern and the wharf widened as the sweeps bit deeper. Hefting his quarterstaff, he hurled it ahead of him toward the ship like a spear, took one more step, then jumped as hard as he could. The dark water passing beneath his feet looked icy, but in a heartbeat he had cleared the ship's rail and was rolling across the deck. As he scrambled to his feet, he heard a grunt and a curse behind him. Tom Maryland hoisted himself up on the railing with another curse and climbed over onto the deck. "I lost my stick. I'll want another." Rubbing his right leg, he peered down at the still widening strip of water behind the vessel and shivered. "I had a bath today already." The shirtless steersman stared wide-eyed from him to Matt and back again, clutching the tiller as if wondering whether he could use it to defend himself from madmen. The tall man seemed nearly as stunned. His pale blue eyes bulged and his mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. His dark beard, cut to a point, seemed to quiver with rage, and his narrow face grew purple. "By the stone," he bellowed finally. "What is the meaning of this? I've no room on this vessel for as much as a ship's cat, and I'd not take vagabonds who leap onto my decks if I did. Sana, Vasa, heave this rubbish over the side." 2 extremely large men, barefoot and stripped to the waist, straightened from coiling lines and started toward the stern. The men at the sweeps continued their work, bending to lift the blades, taking 3 long steps along the deck, then straightening and walking backwards, hauling the ship ahead on their blades. Matt waved the Amelin's paper toward the bearded man, the captain supposed, with one hand, and fished a gold crown out of his pouch with the other, taking care, even in his haste, that the fellow saw that there were more where that came from. Tossing the heavy coin to the man, he spoke quickly, still waving the paper. For the inconvenience of our boarding as we did, Captain. More to come for passage. On business of the White Tower. Personal command of the Amelin seat. Imperative we sail immediately. To Arengil in Andor. Utmost urgency. The blessings of the White Tower on all who aid us. The Tower's wrath on any who impede us. Certain the man had seen the flame of Tarvalin seal by that time, and little more, Matt hoped. He folded the paper again and thrust it back out of sight, eyeing the two big men uneasily as they came up on either side of the captain. Burn me, they both have arms like parents. He wished he had his quarterstaff in hand. He could see it lying where it had landed, further down the deck. He tried to look sure and confident, the sort of man others had better not trifle with, a man with the power of the White Tower behind him. Long way behind me, I hope. The captain looked at Matt doubtfully, and even more so at Tom in his gleeman's cloak, and none too steady of foot. But he motioned Sanor and Vasa to stop where they were. I would not anger the tower. Burn my soul for the time being, the river trade takes me from Tyr to this den of... I come too often to anger anyone. A tight smile appeared on his face. But I spoke the truth. By the stone I did. 6 cabins I have for passengers, and all full. You can sleep on deck and eat with the crew for another gold crown, each. That is ridiculous, Tom snapped. I don't care what the war has done downriver. That is ridiculous. The two large sailors shifted their bare feet. It is the price, the captain said firmly. I do not want to anger anyone, but I'd as soon not have any business you can be on aboard my vessel. Like letting a man pay you so he can coat you with hot tar, mixing in that business. You pay the price, or you go over to the side, and the Amelin seat herself can dry you off. And I'll keep this for the trouble you've given me, thank you. He stuffed the gold crown Matt had tossed him into a pocket of his puffy-sleeved coat. How much for one of the cabins, Matt asked. To ourselves. You can put whoever is in it now with someone else. You do not want to sleep out in a cold night. And if you don't overwhelm a fellow like this, he'll steal your breeches and say he's doing you a favor. His stomach grumbled loudly. And we eat what you eat, not with the crew, and plenty of it. Matt, Tom said. I'm the one who was supposed to be drunk here. He turned to the captain, flourishing his patch-covered cloak as well as he could, with blanket roll and instrument cases hung about him. As you may have noticed, Captain, I am a gleeman. Even in the open air, his voice suddenly seemed to echo. For the price of our passages, I would be more than glad to entertain your passengers and your crew. My crew is aboard to work, gleeman, not be entertained. The captain stroked his pointed beard. His pale eyes priced Matt's plain coat to the copper. So you want a cabin, do you? He barked a laugh. And my meals? Well, you can have my cabin and my meals. For 5 gold crowns from each of you. Ander in weight. Those were the heaviest. He began to laugh so hard his words came out in wheezes. Flanking him, Sanor and Vasa grinned wide grins. For 10 crowns, you can take my cabin and my meals, and I'll move in with the passengers and eat with the crew. Burn my soul, I will. By the stone, I swear it. For 10 gold crowns. Laughter choked off anything else. He was still laughing and gasping for breath and wiping tears from his eyes when Matt pulled out one of his 2 purses, but laughter stopped by the time Matt had counted 5 crowns into his hands. The captain blinked in disbelief. The 2 big crewmen were poleaxed. Ander in weight, you said? Matt asked. It was hard to judge without scales, but he laid 7 more on the pile. 2 actually were Anderin, and he thought the others made up the weight. Close enough for this fellow. After a moment, he added another 2 gold Tyran crowns. For whoever you'd be pushing out of the cabin, they paid for. He did not think the passengers would see a copper of it, but it sometimes paid to appear generous. Unless you mean to share with them. No, of course not. They ought to have something for having to crowd in with others. There's no need for you to eat with your crew, Captain. You are welcome to share Tom's meals and mine in your cabin. Tom stared at him as hard as the others did. Who are you? The bearded man's voice was a hoarse whisper. Are you, by any chance, a young lord in disguise? I am no lord, Matt laughed. He had reason to laugh. The gray gull was well out into the darkness of the harbor now, with the wharf a band of light pointing up the black gap, not far ahead now, where the water gates led out onto the river. The sweeps drove the vessel toward that gap quickly. Men were already swinging the long slanting booms around, preparatory to unlashing the sails. And with gold in his hands, the captain no longer seemed ready to throw anyone overboard. If you don't mind, Captain, could we see our cabin? Your cabin, I mean. It's late, and I, for one, want a few hours' sleep. His stomach spoke to him. And supper. As the vessel put its bow into the blackness, the bearded man himself led the way down a ladder to a short, narrow passage, lined with doors set close together. While the captain cleared his things from his cabin, it ran the width of the stern, with its bed and all of its furnishings built into the walls, except 2 chairs and a few chests. And saw that Matt and Tom were settled. Matt learned a great deal, beginning with the fact that the man would not be pushing any passengers out of their quarters. He had too much respect for the coin they had paid, if not for them, to allow that. The captain would take his first cabin, and that officer would take the second bed, pushing each lower man down till the deckmaster would end sleeping up in the bow with the crew. Matt did not think that information could be very useful, but he listened to everything the man said. It was always best to know not only where you were going, but who you were dealing with, or they might just take your coat and boots and leave you to walk home through the rain in bare feet. The captain was a tyrant named Juan Malia, and he spoke with great volubility once he had worked out Matt and Tom to his own satisfaction. He was not nobly born, he said, not him, but he would not have anyone think he was a fool. A young man with more gold than any young man should have by right might be a thief, if everyone did not know thieves never escaped Tarvalin with their haul. A young man dressed like a farm boy, but with the air and confidence of a lord he denied being. By the stone, I'll not say you are, if you say you are not. Malia winked and chuckled and tugged the point of his beard. A young man carrying a paper bearing the Amerlin's seal and bound for Antwerp. There was no secret that Queen Morghese had visited Tarvalin, though her reason certainly was. It was obvious to Malia something was afoot between Cainlin and Tarvalin. And Matt and Tom were messengers. For Morghese, he thought by Matt's accent. Anything he could do to help in so great an enterprise would be his pleasure. Not that he meant to poke where he was not wanted. Matt exchanged startled looks with Tom, who was stowing his instrument cases under a table built out from one wall. The room had 2 small windows on either side and a pair of lamps in jointed brackets for light. That's nonsense, Matt said. Of course, Malia replied. He straightened from pulling clothes out of a chest at the foot of the bed and smiled. Of course. The cupboard in the wall seemed to hold charts of the river he would need. I'll say no more. But he did mean to poke, though he attempted to disguise it, and he rambled while he tried to pry. Matt listened and answered the questions with grunts or shrugs or a word or two, while Tom said less than that. The gleeman kept shaking his head while unburdening himself of his possessions. Malia had been a riverman all his life, though he dreamed of sailing on the sea. He hardly spoke of a country besides Tyr without contempt. Andor was the only one to escape, and the praise he finally managed was grudging despite his obvious efforts. Good horses in Andor, I've heard. Not bad. Not as good as Tyrant's stock, but good enough. You make good steel and iron goods, bronze and copper. I've traded for them often enough, though you charge a weighty price. But then you have those mines in the mountains of mist. Gold mines, too. We have to earn our gold in Tyr. Mayenne received his greatest contempt. Even less a country than Myronese. One city and a few leagues of land. They underprice the oil from our good Tyrant olives just because their ships know how to find the oilfish shoals. They've no right to be a country at all. He hated Ilion. One day we'll loot Ilion bare, tear down every town and village, and sow their filthy ground with salt. Malia's beard almost bristled with outrage at how filthy the Ilion land was. Even their olives are putrid. One day we'll carry every last Ilioner pig off in chains. That is what the High Lord Salmon says. Matt wondered what the man thought Tyr would do with all those people if they actually fulfilled this scheme. The Illianers would have to be fed, and they would surely do no work in chains. It made no sense to him, but Malia's eyes shone when he spoke of it. Only fools let themselves be ruled by a king or a queen, by one man or woman. Except Queen Morgase, of course, he put in hastily. She is a fine woman, so I've heard. Beautiful, I'm told. All those fools bowing to one fool. The High Lords ruled Tyr together, reaching decisions in concert, and that was how things should be. The High Lords knew what was right and good and true, especially the High Lord Saman. No man could go wrong obeying the High Lords, especially the High Lord Saman. Beyond kings and queens, beyond even Ilion, lay a bigger hatred Malia attempted to keep hidden. But he talked so much in trying to find out what they were up to, and grew so carried away by the sound of his own voice, that he let more slip than he intended. They must travel a great deal serving a great queen like Morgase. They must have seen many lands. He dreamed of the sea because then he could see lands he had only heard of, because then he could find the Maenner oilfish shoals, could outtrade the sea folk and the filthy Illianers. And the sea was far from Tarval. They must understand that, forced as they were to travel among odd places and people they could not have stomached if they were not serving Queen Morgase. I never liked docking there, never knowing who might be using the power. He almost spat the last word. Since he had heard the High Lord Saman speak, though, burn my soul, it makes me feel like hullworms are burrowing into my belly just looking at their white tower now, knowing what they've planned. The High Lord Saman said the Aes Sedai meant to rule the world. Saman said they meant to crush every nation, put their foot on every man's throat. Saman said Tyr could no longer hold the power out of its own lands, and believed that was enough. Saman said Tyr had its rightful day of glory coming, but Tarvalin stood between Tyr and glory. There's no hope for it. Sooner or later they will have to be hunted down and killed. Every last Aes Sedai. The High Lord Saman says the others might be saved, the young ones, the novices, the accepted, if they're brought to the stone. But the rest must be eradicated. That's what the High Lord Saman says. The White Tower must be destroyed. For a moment, Malia stood in the middle of his cabin, arms full of clothes and books and rolled charts, hair almost brushing the deck beams overhead, staring at nothing with pale blue eyes, while the White Tower tumbled into ruin. Then he gave a start, as if realizing what he had just said. His pointed beard waggled uncertainly. That's what he says. I think that may be going too far, so... The High Lord Saman, he speaks so that he carries a man beyond his own beliefs. If Caemlyn can make covenants with the Tower, why, so can Tyr. He shivered and did not seem to know it. That is what I see. As you say, Matt told him, and felt mischief bubble inside. I think your suggestion is the right one, Captain. But don't stop with a few accepted, though. Ask a dozen Aes Sedai to come, or two. Think what the Stone of Tyr would be like with 24 Aes Sedai in it. Malia shuddered. I will send a man for my money chest, he said stiffly, and stalked out. Matt frowned at the closed door. I think I shouldn't have said that. I don't know why you might think that, Tom said dryly. Next, you could try telling the Lord Captain Commander of the White Cloaks he should marry the Amelin seat. His eyebrows drew down like white caterpillars. High Lord Saman? Never heard of any High Lord Saman. It was Matt's turn to be dry. Well, even you cannot know everything about all the...
All right, everyone, I'm going to call into this life tonight. I think everyone stops by and everyone keeps stopping by. Y'all have a good one.